told us that the two people can read to a book that it is more than 20 pages. But what I'm not so sure about the video that we have to do is that we have to do it together. I mean, with the person that I'm with, or every partner or every person has to do their own video. I'm not so sure if you may help me please with it.
Good question. Yes. Now, you present together. Yes,
Yeah,
it is one presentation for both of you. Just that. So your 10 minutes are for both of you with one presentation.
thank you.
Yes.
Thanks a lot.
And
And it is the maximum, it is 10 minutes for both.
yes. Yes,
Thank you so much.
please.
Thanks a lot.
Any other question? No. All right. And okay, Melanie's going to have to do something about her internet connection very soon. Hopefully, she'll join us. Um, there. All right, I'm going to show you a video. Maybe you have watched it, maybe you haven't. Marcelo, you have your hand up.
Yes, I'm very sorry. Before you start with the lesson, it's something regarding to what Jenny said about the video, the 10-minute video. Well, because of the inconvenience we have to meet each other, can we present two videos? I mean, one article, but two videos, 5 minutes each. Can we do that?
All right. Okay, if you really cannot meet, okay, again, I'm not asking you to travel or move, just a Zoom.
Yeah.
Right? You just meet by Zoom and you do the presentation in Zoom. That's what I want. I don't need you to meet because we are still socially distancing. So please don't move a lot. But if you are definitely unable to do this, I guess there is no option, right? But the ideal thing is that you work together and you make this presentation work as one. Again, if you work together, the idea is that you come up with one, let's say, coherent presentation. It is not that from one presentation to the next, you're going to change colors and you're going to change font, or you're going to change everything, right? Because the idea is that it appears one single presentation, right? So if you cannot meet, definitely do it separate. Upload the two videos. I won't say no to that. It doesn't make me the happiest person on earth, but I will not oppose it. All right? But just make sure that your two presentations are consistent. Okay? Because that is the idea of working as a group. Just to make that single piece of work consistent and coherent from top to bottom.
Mhm.
But yeah.
Okay, thank you.
You're welcome. Where am I there?
Here 4 years ago, and I remember at the time that the talks weren't put online. I think they were given to TEDsters in a box set of DVDs, which they put on their shelves where they are now. And actually, Chris called me a week after I'd given my talk and said, we're going to start putting them online. Could we put yours online? I said, sure. And 4 years later, As he said, it's been seen by it's been downloaded 4 million times. So I suppose you could multiply that by 20 or something to get the number of people who've seen it. And as Chris says, there is a hunger for videos of me. You know. Don't you feel? So this whole event has been an elaborate build-up to me doing another one for you, so here it is. Al Gore spoke at the TED conference I spoke at 4 years ago and talked about the climate crisis, and I referenced that at the end of my last talk. So I want to pick up from there, because I only had 18 minutes, frankly. And so as I was saying, you see, he's right. I mean, there is a major climate crisis, obviously, and I think if people don't believe it, they should get out more. But I believe there's a second climate crisis, which is as severe, which has the same origins, and that we have to deal with the same urgency. And I mean by this, and you may say, by the way, look, I'm good. You know, I have one climate crisis. I don't really need a second one. But this is a crisis of not natural resources, though I believe that's true, but a crisis of human resources. I believe fundamentally, as many speakers have said during the past few days, that we make very poor use of our talents. Very many people go through their whole lives having no real sense of what their talents may be, or if they have any to speak of. I meet all kinds of people who don't think they're really good at anything. Actually, I kind of divide the world into two groups now. Jeremy Bentham, the great utilitarian philosopher, once spiked this argument. You know, he said there are two types of people in this world: those who divide the world into two types, and those who do not. Well, well, I do. And I meet all kinds of people who don't enjoy what they do. They simply go through their lives getting on with it. They get no great pleasure from what they do. They endure it rather than enjoy it and wait for the weekend. But I also meet people who love what they do and couldn't imagine doing anything else. If you said to them, don't do this anymore, they'd wonder what you were talking about. Because it isn't what they do, it's who they are. They say, but this is me. You know, it would be foolish for me to abandon this because it speaks to my most authentic self. And it's not true of enough people. In fact, on the contrary, I think it's still true of a minority of people. And I think there are many possible explanations for it. And high among them is education. Because education, in a way, dislocates very many people from their natural talents. And human resources are like natural resources. They're often buried deep. You have to go looking for them. They're not just lying around on the surface. You have to create the circumstances where they show themselves. And you might imagine education would be the way that happens, but too often it's not. Every education system in the world is being reformed at the moment, and it's not enough. Reform is no use anymore, because that's simply improving a broken model. What we need, and the word's been used many times during the course of the past few days, is not evolution, but a revolution in education. This has to be transformed into something else. One of the real challenges is to innovate fundamentally in education. Innovation is hard because it means doing something that people don't find very easy for the most part. It means challenging what we take for granted, things that we think are obvious. The great problem for reform or transformation is the tyranny of common sense. Things that people think, well, they can't be done any other way because that's the way it's done. I came across a great quote recently from Abraham Lincoln, who I thought you'd be pleased to have quoted at this point. He said this in December 1862 to the second annual meeting of Congress. I ought to explain that I have no idea what was happening at the time. We don't teach American history in Britain. We suppress it. You know, this is our policy. So, so no doubt something fascinating was happening in December 1862, which the Americans among us will be aware of. But he said this: the dogmas of the quiet past are inadequate to the stormy present. The occasion is piled high with difficulty, and we must rise with the occasion. I love that. Not rise to it, rise with it. As our case is new, so we must think anew and act anew. We must disenthrall ourselves, and then we shall save our country. I love that word, disenthrall. You know what he means? That there are ideas that all of us are enthralled to, which we simply take for granted as the natural order of things, the way things are. And many of our ideas have been formed not to meet the circumstances of this century, but to cope with the circumstances of previous centuries. But our minds are still hypnotized by them. And we have to disenthrall ourselves of some of them. Now, doing this is easier said than done. It's very hard to know, by the way, what it is you take for granted. And the reason is that you take it for granted. So let me ask you something you may take for granted. How many of you here are over the age of 25? That's not what I think you take for granted. I'm sure you're familiar with that already. But are there any people here under the age of 25? Great. Now, those over 25, could you put your hands up if you're wearing a wristwatch? Now, that's a great deal of us, isn't it? Ask a room full of teenagers the same thing. Teenagers do not wear wristwatches. I don't mean they can't or they're not allowed to. They just often choose not to. And the reason is, you see, that we were brought up in a pre-digital culture, those of us over 25, and so for us, if you want to know the time, you have to wear something to tell it. Kids now live in a world which is digitized, and the time for them is everywhere. They see no reason to do this. And by the way, you don't need to do it either. It's just that you've always done it, and you carry on doing it. My daughter never wears a watch. My daughter Kate, who's 20, she doesn't see the point. You know, as she says, you know, like, it's a single-function device. You know, like how lame is that? You know, and I say, no, it tells the date as well. You know, it has multiple functions. But you see, there are things we're enthralled to in education. Let me give you a couple of examples. One of them is the idea of linearity. That it starts here, and you go through a track, and if you do everything right, you will end up set for the rest of your life. Everybody who's spoken at TED has told us implicitly or sometimes explicitly a different story, that life is not linear, it's organic. We create our lives symbiotically as we explore our talents in relation to the circumstances they help to create for us. But you know, we have become obsessed with this linear narrative, and probably the pinnacle for education is getting you to college. I think we are obsessed with getting people to college. Certain sorts of college. I don't mean you shouldn't go to college, but not everybody needs to go, and not everybody needs to go now. Maybe they go later, not right away. I was up in San Francisco a while ago doing a book signing. There was this guy buying a book. He was in his 30s, and I said, "What do you do?" And he said, "I'm a fireman." And I said, "How long have you been a fireman?" He said, "Always. I've always been a fireman." And I said, "Well, when did you decide?" He said, "As a kid." He said, "Actually, it was a problem for me at school, because at school, everybody wanted to be a fireman." He said, "But I wanted to be a fireman." You know, and he said, "When I got to the senior year of school, my teachers didn't take it seriously. This one teacher didn't take it seriously." He said, "I was throwing my life away if that's all I chose to do with it. That I should go to college, I should become a professional person, I had great potential, and I was wasting my talent to do that." And he said it was humiliating, because he said it in front of the whole class, and I really felt dreadful. But it's what I wanted. And as soon as I left school, I applied to the fire service, and I was accepted. And he said, "You know, I was thinking about that guy recently, just a few minutes ago when you were speaking about this teacher." He said, "Because 6 months ago, I saved his life." He said he was in a car wreck, and I pulled him out, gave him CPR, and I saved his wife's life as well. He said, "I think he thinks better of me now." You know what I mean? Human communities depend upon a diversity of talent, not a singular conception of ability. And at the heart of our challenges, at the heart of the challenge is to reconstitute our sense of ability and of intelligence. This linearity thing is a problem. When I arrived in LA about 9 years ago, I came across a policy statement, very well intentioned, which said college begins in kindergarten. No, it doesn't. It doesn't. If we had time, I could go into this, but we don't. Kindergarten begins in kindergarten. A friend of mine once said, you know, a 3-year-old is not half a 6-year-old. But as we just heard in this last session, there's such competition now to get into kindergarten, to get to the right kindergarten, that people are being interviewed for it at 3. Kids sitting in front of unimpressed panels, you know, with their resumes. Flicking through it, saying, what, this is it? You've been around for 36 months and this is it. You know, you've achieved nothing. I mean, spent the first 6 months breastfeeding, what I can say. I mean, see, it's outrageous as a conception, but it tracks through. The other big issue is conformity. We have built our education systems on the model of fast food. This is something Jamie Oliver talked about the other day. You know, there are 2 models of quality assurance in catering. One is fast food, where everything is standardized. The other are things like Zagat and Michelin restaurants, where everything is not standardized. They're customized to local circumstances. And we have sold ourselves into a fast food model of education. And it's impoverishing our spirits and our energies as much as fast food is depleting our physical bodies. I think we have to recognize a couple of things here. One is that human talent is tremendously diverse. People have very different aptitudes. I worked out recently that I was given a guitar as a kid at about the same time that Eric Clapton got his first guitar. You know, it worked out for Eric, that's all I'm saying. You know, in a way, it did not for me. I could not get this thing to work, you know. No matter how often, how hard I blew into it, you know, it just wouldn't work. But it's not only about that, it's about passion. Often people are good at things they don't really care for. It's about passion and what excites our spirit and our energy. And if you're doing the thing that you love to do, that you're good at, time takes a different course entirely. My wife's just finished writing a novel, and I think it's a great book. But she disappears for hours on end. You know this. If you're doing something you love, an hour feels like 5 minutes. If you're doing something that doesn't resonate with your spirit, 5 minutes feels like an hour. And the reason so many people are opting out of education is because it doesn't feed their spirit. It doesn't feed their energy or their passion. So I think we have to change metaphors. We have to go from what is essentially an industrial model of education, a manufacturing model, which is based on linearity and conformity and batching people. We have to move to a model that is based more on principles of agriculture. We have to recognize that human flourishing is not a mechanical process, it's an organic process. And you cannot predict the outcome of human development. All you can do is, like a farmer, is create the conditions under which they will begin to flourish. So when we look at reforming education and transforming it, it isn't like cloning a system. There are great ones, like KIPS, it's a great system. There are many great models. It's about customizing them to your circumstances and personalizing education to the people you're actually teaching. And doing that, I think, is the answer to the future, because it's not about scaling a new solution. It's about creating a movement in education in which people develop their own solutions, but with external support based on a personalized curriculum. Now, in this room, there are people who represent extraordinary resources in business, in multimedia, in the internet. These technologies combined with extraordinary talents of teachers, provide an opportunity to revolutionize education. And I urge you to get involved in it, because it's vital not just to ourselves, but to the future of our children. But we have to change from the industrial model to an agricultural model where each school can be flourishing tomorrow. That's where children experience life, or at home if that's where they choose to be educated with their families or their friends. There's been a lot of talk about dreams over the course of this few days. And I wanted just to, very quickly, I was very struck by Natalie Merchant's songs last night, recovering old poems. I wanted to read you a quick, very short poem from W.B. Yeats, who some of you may know. He wrote this to his love, Maud Gonne, and he was bewailing the fact that he couldn't really give her what he thought she wanted from him. And he says, I've got something else, but it may not be for you. He says this: had I the heavens embroidered cloths, enwrought with gold and silver light, of blue and the dim and the dark cloths, of night and light and the half-light, I would spread the cloths under your feet. But I, being poor, have only my dreams. I have spread my dreams under your feet. Tread softly, because you tread on my dreams. And every day, everywhere, our children spread their dreams beneath our feet. And we should tread softly. Thank you. Thank you very much. Thank you, thank you. Thank you.
All right. Okay, very well. So, well, this guy, Sir Ken Robinson, is very famous, and he passed away last year, along as many other nice, good people who were lost last year. Anyway, we're going to work with this in a couple of minutes, but I asked you to watch La Educación Prohibida over the weekend, right? Hopefully you did. And please vote. I'm not going to see who did and who didn't, so I just want to know. All right. The number is decent enough. Okay. What is going to happen right now is let me show you. You're looking at my Eva now. Right. You're looking at my Eva, correct?
Yes.
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 So unless I'm showing you my iTunes again. Here in actividades, la educación prohibida, right? You're going to work in groups, and you're going to use any of these websites to create a mind map, right, of what you discuss in your groups. Correct? So you're going to create a mind map of what you discuss in the groups, and you're going to include a couple more questions that I will send through the chat once you're in your groups, right? And discuss the film you watched in your groups. As a result of your discussion, please present a mind map of the ideas you shared in your groups. Please use any of the following options to create your mind map online. And please mention, sorry, the typo, what actual classroom strategies could be implemented to make sure that learning takes place in an adequate way. Right? So this is part of the discussion. As soon as you're in your groups, I will send 3 more questions for you to implement in your discussion, and you will create your mind maps, right? You can post the link to your mind map in the space where you have to post, or you can post the image or a PDF, whatever is easier for you. All right, you will be divided in groups. Once we come back, I will tell you how to upload that. Is there any question before I divide you to groups? No. All right.
How long, please, how long do we have
How
to
long?
create this?
Okay, for the discussion and the development of your mind map, I would say 20-25 minutes. I will be visiting your groups and see if you need extra time or not, right? But ideally 20-25 minutes for the discussion and the development of the mind map seems fair. But again, I'll be visiting and see how you're doing. Okay? There. Groups. Very good. Okay, please go to your sessions. I will be visiting.
Mention
Hi, teacher Christian. Hi. Would you allow us to share screen, please?
Yes, I have to leave the room and then make
All
sure
right.
you can. Yes.
Thank you.
Paco,
before you leave, like I'm in my Eva, but I cannot see the.
the forum.
Yeah. I cannot see it.
Let me share my screen first.
And the forum is at the bottom of
No,
the
it is
page.
not. This one is not a forum. This one is an activity. You're looking at my
Yes,
EVA now, right?
Yes,
Yes.
I'm there.
Yes, actividades, la educación prohibida. In fundamentals for classroom practice.
Yeah, I'm there, but okay, I'm just gonna close it and reopen it
Refresh maybe.
because I already refreshed, but I'm just gonna close it and open it again.
Paco, in the EVA you can see two links for education prohibida. One is recursos and the other is
the activity. The
Yeah.
activity is the one.
activities.
Yeah, but I check everything and I don't have it.
All right, let me.
I'm just gonna do it again.
All right.
because basically everything in life has to do with groups. You have to learn to socialize. And well, there we have, I think the most important part of group work is that you get to work with people that have similar interests, right? Also, well, going to the video, we checked that the role of education has to be more agricultural, in the sense that it shouldn't be standardized or like an industry. Education is not an industry, right? So we need to reconstruct the system and to take the mind, talents, and abilities, and take into account the students' feelings. In the sense of like rising to rise, we detected he basically is talking about adapting education to the changes and adapting, helping people to adapt to the new situations, right? So basically, the whole thing, I think, is that we do not need a reform. We need a transformation. We need to come up with something really, really completely new. And we had a time to discuss the experience of our friend Paco, who he actually gave up on teaching. He just quit and he went to study in Europe. But then he had a transformative experience when he saw that things can be done in a different way, and he got inspired to the point that now he's back in teaching. He's taking this master's degree. So I think that's an example of this taken to reality. Well, that's what I can say as for our group. And I don't know if anybody has any question. Well, my classmates are Marisol, Paco, and Raul, and of course me, David.
All right, nicely done. I guess we're satisfied. No questions so far. All right, let's do something before we continue with the rest of the groups. Let's take a 10-minute break, right? So you go get some coffee or go and smoke a cigarette, and see you in 10. Okay?
Okay, thank you, teacher.
Okay, thanks.
Thanks.
Okay. Well, Emilia, can you help me please sharing the screen?
Yes.
Okay, good evening, everyone, once again. Yeah, I think we are group number 4. Okay, and well, we are gonna share with you all what we discussed in our group about this documentary that is the Prohibited Education. And we have divided our presentation in industrial education, well, in different modes like industrial education, agricultural education, classroom strategies, and also we have in the last part, revolution versus reform. Well, in the first part, we can say that industrial education is compared with, with the traditional education, in which all the contents, when it was based on contents and the teacher was the center of the class, there were only flexible assessment in which we were prepared only for taking exams, for taking tests, and that was the purpose of evaluation. So in this kind of education, we can mention, or we mentioned that there were passive learners in which the students didn't have the chance to participate, to speak up about, about their ideas. So for this reason, students were very unmotivated. So there was a lack of differentiated teaching. I mean, teachers used to follow only one model of teaching, and it was based on repetition. Talking about language, about English, it was focused on just grammar rules and so forth. So for this reason, this kind of education was used to block, the creativity and the critical thinking. Well, if we pass to this industrial education, we have the agriculture education. Okay, so this is the new model that we are, that is based, this documentary, in which it says that we have to involve the whole community, I mean, the whole society with parents, students, and teachers. Yeah. Also, it mentioned that students are the ones who have to choose their path. It means they are the ones who develop their own skills depending on their interest. Okay, the different methodologies that the teachers use are, have the purpose of solving problems, and these kind of problems have to be reflected on real life situations. Okay, here also students' need and interests are taken into account. Yep, there is a variety of assessment based on children's development especially. Okay, they are not fixed only on taking exams or taking a test. On the contrary, yeah, the assessment here in this kind of model is differentiated. So all of them are focused to develop critical thinking. Okay, well, also in this kind of education, it's very important to mention that there is a cooperative work between, the whole teachers in order to look for the best strategies to apply in the classroom. So that is a very good advantage that we have in this kind of model. The teacher is not only the controller, he is a guide. Okay, here is very important because the teacher is the one who motivates and also is the one who makes the path for getting the goals. Yep. Well, which are the classroom strategies that we are, okay, or we got an agreement here. It's very important to have a collaborative work, use of concrete material, implement different situations to develop different skills. Okay, use problem-based learning. Okay, implement topics of students' interest. That is what is very important nowadays. Okay, support and motivate teachers. We consider that if the teachers are not motivated, well, they are not going to be the ones to motivate other people, in this case, students. We need to have a friendly environment, okay, in which the students have the, the intrinsic motivation to go to the schools, and they don't have to be pushed to go there by force. Well, and students and teachers establish classroom rules cooperatively. So here in this part is not only the teacher who establishes the rules, they both together, students and teachers are the ones who establish rules, and that is for good. So in the last part, revolution versus reform. Here is very important to mention that we as teachers, we have to work because of vocation and because of passion, okay? Also, as I mentioned before, it's very important the teacher's motivation. Here we said that the salary is a factor that has to motivate teachers as well, okay? It requires a profound change, not only in schools, but in the Ministry of Education. We mentioned that here things can be done only by teachers. No, this is a deep transformation beginning with the authorities, in this case, the Ministry of Education. It's very important to have a progressive teacher training, not obligatory because that is not good, right? We have to do it because it's our obligation, it's our ethic to be updated with all these kind of new changes in education. We have to have a different attitude. This has to be open-minded, okay? And finally, limited the number of students per classroom. Okay, well, we think that this is very important. You want to give a good quality of education. Yes, I think the number of students is going to be a factor that has to be focused on in order to make these changes. So this is what we discuss in our group, okay, on behalf of this documentary. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Nice job. Let's see. Who were we missing? Valentina, your group is ready? Yes. And then Marlon's group at the end, I would say.
Sorry. Hi, everyone. Well, as we know, we have to watch the video Forbidden Education. Well, it is important to recall what our friends had said, that it was known as a colonized education. And this was created by the Industrial Revolution needs, which was to create or boil people with based on numbers, statistics, all of the stuff that you already mentioned. But something that we had to know is that, as the video mentioned, they cannot develop what they have inside for and the teacher is just the center of the classroom, just to provide information in that. But the students do not have the opportunity to analyze that information, because the teacher is the one that is right or wrong. So how do we want to create students with a critical thinking if we are the ones that give them the right answers and the wrong answers? And also mention that the students do not feel comfortable in learning. They feel dismotivated. Sorry, they feel less motivated, and we get that traditional education is overreacted. But as most of you have said, this has changed. Sorry, this has changed because we are in a new area, and this new area provides us new opportunities and new methodologies that have developed during this time. So they offer us new methodologies as the flipped learning, gamification, cooperation learning, and problem-based solving, and so on. But how do we use them? Some of you have mentioned what they are used for, but we don't know if they are good with if they don't provide a good result. So we had to look very careful for them, because we can use similar methodologies in the same classroom to using methodology and create and make that our students be more critical, reflexive, and also search and investigate a bit more for themselves, and also develop their passion for learning. I had the opportunity to have my internship in a high school here in Ecuador, in Quito, which had applied the flipped learning methodology. And I was impressed because we always see a teacher in front of the classroom just giving and providing information, but we don't see students in the classroom looking for the information by themselves. So they had to look the information first, and then the teacher just, it's a guy in the classroom. That teacher just they just guide them from the right path. The students are the ones that had to identify the right from wrong, not the teacher. James is going to tell you a bit more.
Okay, thank you, partner. So I'm gonna talk about the TikTok of Sir Ken Robinson. Well, the quote of Abraham Lincoln was that the dogmas of the quiet past are inadequate to the stormy present. So here we have the question, because he said that we have to rise with the occasion, and he didn't say to rise to the occasion. So what is the meaning of to rise with? So to rise with means we are all in this together, and we face the unknown by supporting each other. So as Erwin said, we as teachers and students, we need to adapt to the new situations or the new environmental surroundings. So what is the difference between industrial and agricultural model of education? Industrial model is, they have the singular conception of ability, is kind of a fast food model of education, and it also has linearity education. So they use a lot of reform, but reform is not used anymore. We do not look for evolution in education, but revolution. So we must challenge what we take for granted. And what is the meaning of agricultural model of education is that education will not be linear anymore, but organic. Like as teacher, we must adequate the conditions so that the students will flourish with their abilities. So there is not a singular conception of ability, but we have more abilities in students, and he insisted that we have to create a movement that students develop solutions. That's all, partners.
Thank you very much. Nice. And finally, I presume Marlon and company, right?
Yes.
Yep.
Marlon
Very.
is present.
Well, guys, Professor, good evening. We were talking about, well, you almost said everything about the video. So we were talking about education system, and we take this first part here from the other class also that we had studied that said curriculum must take into account the emotions of the students. So we consider that emotions are really important in the curricular program. And according to the video that we watched, there was a part when mentioned that unfortunately some teachers are just just feel the pressure of the system of education, so they just want to um, fulfill the content, and they don't mind if the student is learning or not. Another part that we were talking about was traditional model of education, and we were talking about that, for example, industrialized education system where the teacher is the most important inside the class, and students even don't even have the chance to interact each others, or maybe they cannot talk each others because it's forbidden. So another important thing was the massive number of students, where we watch in the video that there are classes, not just in Ecuador, in other parts of the world, where we have 40 students, 45 students, and it's really difficult to get knowledge in everybody. So another important thing about this, we were talking about theory and practice. And we were talking that it's really important to relate the knowledge that we have in the class and make it put it into the practice with our students. One important part in the video mentioned that the students learn more when they are playing, even when they are in class. So we can teach our students through some games, playing, where they feel motivated, because one teacher in the video mentioned that a student, if he's not motivated, he won't learn anything about, for example, English. So we can use a lot of strategies, but if the student don't want to study English, he won't learn anything any day. So we need to look for different strategies, but the best strategy that we think was playing. Playing was good. Students can learn through playing games inside the classroom or outside the classroom. Another important thing that we talk about is that all the subjects that we are studying in our high schools, they must be connected. For example, in the video mentioned that a teacher of mathematics also can relate mathematics with geography, with Spanish, So because everything is in the same context. So students are gonna be more more useful in the society if they are prepared in every subject, because mathematics is just not numbers. English is just not grammar, for example. So we need to relate all the subjects with our students. Another thing that we talk about, and well, this was kind of interesting when in the video mentioned that, for example, a school is not as necessary as we thought. For example, one teacher mentioned that 8 hours are really exhausting for students. So, for example, they say that a person who is studying the university, maybe he or she has 5 or 4 hours per day. but a student in the high school, he has 8 hours. So that is the reason that the students feel really bored. They don't want to go to high school or school because it's 8 hours and it's really exhausting. And we were talking that we have some subjects that even they are not necessary for real life. So, for example, if we were talking about trinomio cuadrado perfecto. So in my case, what the heck? So it is better if a student learn to be critical, they have a critical knowledge. It is better than the students learn, for example, trinomio cuadrado perfecto. Another important thing we were talking about is that, for example, a child who is 5 years old is a genius. Everybody when he's 5 years old is a genius person. But what happened then? All people following the same old methods in education, so nobody is a genius after 10 or 50 years of the same system education. So, for example, I would like to tell you this. When I was in United States and I have the chance to go to a school, and students and teachers, they go to school at 8 a.m. But teachers don't enter to the classroom at 8 a.m. Just students. So the teachers leave students for 30 minutes, and what they do, they choose a book, they start to talk. But I was thinking in that moment, what would happen if we do that in Ecuador? What the hell, man? So everybody's gonna fight, go out of the class. So that was really impressive for me when I was in the United States. So a child who is 8 years or 9 years old, and he's alone, and he chose a book, and he started to read alone without the pressure of the teacher. That's awesome. That is really awesome. So that's what we have to do in our culture. Some people say that, well, it depends on the cultures, but I don't know. And another important thing we were talking about is about values. About values, we say that, for example, it's really important to talk about values in education. Not just because I said you need to respect, you need to be responsible. No, you need to apply, you need to make your students that is something important in our classrooms. And finally, we would say that is education is like, as the video says, the education has not to be mechanic, has not to be mechanic, has to be something organic that the students have the opportunity to flourishing along. It's like, for example, people say that what happened in real life, people go to the forest, they are supposed to clean the forest, but when they leave the forest, there are a lot of garbage. So what is the reason? It's exactly with the students. So we need to make them learn, in this case English, in a organic way, not just in a mechanic way. This is it. Thank you.
All right, thank you very much. Nicely done as well. Okay, just a couple of pointers. Okay, one very important thing from Mr. Robinson's speech was this idea of rising to versus rising with, right? And it is connected to how we face difficulties. Latinos in general, most of the times, are very reactive. We wait for something to happen and then we find a solution. We react to the problem, right? That is pretty much rising to the occasion, right? It's just we see a problem, we face it. But what Mr. Robinson is trying to tell us is that we should rise with the occasion, not to wait for an issue to arise for us to find a solution. We should be going hand in hand with any technological advance, with any methodological proposal. We should be up to the occasion already, not reacting, but going hand in hand with it, right? And uh, another important aspect is that I like this quote very much, like, reform is not enough. It is just trying to fix a broken system. And yes, most of us might agree that the system is broken and it needs not change, but substitution. It needs revolution, right? And although it might seem very difficult for us from our very little space in the schools we work in, try to promote this revolution, right? I know, and I've told this many, many times, that we are supposed to follow rules, right? And I'm not telling you break the rules, right? We have to conform with the things we have to do. Sometimes there is no escape from what we have to do in our institutions, but there are also sometimes that you can bend the rules a little bit, right? So that not only you, but your students are satisfied with the content they are receiving, with the learning they are receiving, right? And um, all kind of knowledge is valuable, right? Whether it is mathematics or chemistry or English, right? I'm very sure we felt terrible when somebody said English is not important anymore. You shouldn't teach English, and English became just this talleres, right? It felt like it felt very bad. I was gonna say something bad. Anyway, so we should value, we should appreciate every kind of knowledge, and we should take advantage of every kind of knowledge, right? We should help our students deal with mathematics, with chemistry, with literature, with anything in English as well, right? So things are not isolated, things are all connected, right? All right, that would be the end of me talking. We have a presentation today, don't we? Yes, and you have exactly 41 minutes to finish. So, pretty please, sugar on top, group number 1, the floor is yours.
Okay, thank you so much. Let me a moment. I am going to share you the screen. Is this? Okay, now we're going to start with James.
Good evening, teacher and partners. Again, we are group number 1, Viviana, Evelyn, James, and Nicholas. So we have the topic, okay, the teaching. Can you please return? Thank you. What do we need? What do I need to know? Okay, so I will start talking about the teacher priorities or the teaching priorities, and we have some aspects in order to continue. Please. Thank you. We have these priorities: fluency, accuracy. We have different styles and Englishes, vocabulary, and writing. Okay. So let's start with fluency and accuracy. Fluency, what is the meaning of fluency? Fluency means to flow. So it is the ability to communicate without too much hesitation, too many pauses, or maybe some aspects that cause maybe barriers in communications. And accuracy is the correct use of the forms of language. It means phonologically, syntactically, semantically, or maybe when you use discourse factors in the language, okay, produced by the speaker. It is the ability to produce grammatically correct sentences. So what is fluency and accuracy teaching? What is the meaning of that? Well, students actually, they can get the message, across effectively. But as teachers, we have to, as the picture, we have to make a balance between accuracy and fluency, because currently native speakers, they don't pay more attention to accuracy, because nowadays getting the message across is much important, or is more important than accuracy. So we as teachers have to balance this aspect in our class. So I will give you some examples, because the book says that we don't have a complete misunderstanding, but we have a slight discomfort when we hear or when we see something that is not correct. And as an example, I don't know if you have listened to the Beatles, maybe the song Ticket to Ride. In the chorus, they say that she's got a ticket to ride and she don't care. So don't care, she don't care is kind of a slight discomfort as we are learning English. Or maybe when, I don't know if you have watched No se aceptan devoluciones with Derbez. There is a part very important for me, because he is with his daughter, and someone needs to come into the room, and he says racing, because he wanted to say pasa, pasa, but he is saying racing. So this is kind of a misunderstanding here. Okay, let's continue, please. Next. Okay, we have different styles and Englishes. Okay, as the picture says, we have Fringlish, Winglish, Black English, Spanglish. Okay, Hinglish, Singlish from Singapore. Some examples of Spanglish, for example, is estoy flirteando con esta chica, etc. So we as teachers must know that there is not just one English style. We have a lot of styles. For example, when teenagers are making conversations, or maybe when we are talking to a local community, okay? But what do we have to tell about the styles is, for example, in written, in written examples, for example, informal letters and formal letters. So here we have a role as teachers. We have to make some differences here, and the students need to write acceptably and accurate when they are writing texts that are informal rather than formal. For example, essays. Let's continue, please. Thank you. So what is the vocabulary teaching, okay? Here we have that it is not necessary it is not necessary to teach consciously vocabulary, because it will come through, okay, and they will acquire it with a communicative exposure, okay. So current investigations say that when you teach grammar, students will acquire vocabulary, because teachers assume that vocabulary could take care of itself, okay, when you teach grammar. But the book says that that's wrong, because they acquire vocabulary by reading comprehension rather than grammar. The next, please. Okay, as a final topic here is the writing. So we as teachers use this skill for language practice and testing, but we don't use it for writing skill itself, okay? So for example, writing is less important than listening, reading, and speaking when we talk about a communicative purpose. So it becomes less important than these three aspects or skills. So we as teachers have to recall this importance of informal writing. Okay, so what caught my attention was that we as teachers have we have to teach students how to write informal texts because of the internet. When we are chatting, or maybe when we are using our social networks as Facebook, such as Twitter. So the book says that we as teachers must teach them how to prepare, or maybe how to learn abbreviations in English, or maybe the use of handwriting, or maybe the fast typing that we have installed in our cell phones. So here I have here we have some examples of abbreviations, and I don't know if you can see the chat, the Zoom chat, and I don't know if you can answer these abbreviations. If you know, please, you can participate here. Maybe what is the meaning of ASAP?
As soon as possible.
Okay.
I think it's WhatsApp. No.
ASAP is as soon as possible. The next one is before. See you. How are you? The next one, what is that?
By the way.
By the way. The next one.
By the way, I don't know.
I do know. What? I don't know. Okay. The next one is in my opinion. LOL. What is the meaning of LOL?
Laugh out loud.
League of Legends. What is the meaning of the next one?
Laughing my blank out.
Yes, which is translated in Spanish, me cago de risa. Okay. OMG, oh my God, and then the last one, thanks. Thank you.
Okay, I'm going to continue with this lesson. So for the next activity, I need you to participate a lot. If you know the answer, you can activate your microphones, please. Okay, now we have a game about the English language. So here we have the first question. What lingua franca means? When you say the truth, the perfect use of language, the common language, or vernacular language?
Sí.
Okay, we know that it's correct. Letter C, the common language. The next.
Viviana, I think you have to share this with sounds because I didn't listen to it.
Ah, okay, the sound. No, okay. Thank you. Continue to the next question. Okay, environment, it is important. Okay, what is the most spoken language? Mandarin, Spanish, English, or French?
A, Mandarin.
Mandarin.
Yes, that is the correct. It is the most spoken. Go to the next. What is the most studied language around the world?
English.
English.
Okay, the most studied is English. That's correct. The next. What are the most common words used in English? I and you, but and, what do you do, or do and go?
I and you.
That and you.
Okay, the correct is
I and you probably.
A and you. It is most used in daily conversations. Go to the next. The most used adjective in the English language.
Beautiful.
Amazing.
Good.
Good.
I think it's
Good.
It is good. It is good. It is used a lot. The final one. Which language is more complex?
Spanish.
Spanish.
Yes, it is. Thank you so much for your participation. Now here we have a map. English is an international language, we know that. And I need you to see the the blue color, it represents the countries where English is an official language. And in this another map, we have the entire world, but I need you to focus on the green color. That is the color of countries which are studied English the most, okay? And you can see the differences between those, the official language and the another countries which are studying English. Okay, for that reason, we know that English is the most important lingua franca. For that reason, we need to study English. I have watched a video about Ivan Vallejo, and Ivan Vallejo shared his experience about he was lost in the mountains, and then he found with another person, and this person was a Russian, and then they have different codes, and they have to use English to survive. That is a real experience. And now English speakers outnumber the native ones. It means that there are more people studying English than the native ones. Okay. In this part, I have this. Which are major varieties of English to teach? That is a question that as a teachers we have to ask ourselves. For example, here we have some difference about British and American. So we are going to read, please. Jenny, can you help me with the vocabulary, please?
Okay, in British, we say fortnight, in American 2 weeks. Kit in American is uniform. Flat in British, and apartment in America. Biscuit in British, American cookie. Post, it is in British. In American, it is mail. And the last one in British, holiday, and American is vacation.
Okay, thank you so much. So now we have the principal question. Which are major varieties of English to teach? So the answer is that the question needs to be asked is rather, which lexical, grammatical, phonological, or orthographical forms are most likely to be understood by your students? What is easier for them? Okay, and you notice the differences. For example, say fortnight, the students are going to need to look for that word in a dictionary, but if you say 2 weeks, is easier for them to learn. And that is the reason that we have to teach a more standard language, okay? Now, talking about native and non-native English teacher, there are a few differences. No, it is not a big difference, but a native teacher uses the language as more in a real situation. It is more real, the speaking she or he has, okay? But a non-native English teacher could be a model for the non-native students about the talking about the English. The teacher could be a model for them, like an example of English language, okay? But both are competent, okay? English, Spanish teachers here in Ecuador teaching English could be more effective, but we know that we only are focused on teaching grammar, but that is a mistake. Both of them are competent. For example, when you are going to talk with a native English teacher, it could be most relevant for specific schools where English is a kind of bilingual school, okay? And you are going to need an English native teacher when you are going, for example, to go to work abroad. And that could be more important to have a native English teacher than a non-native one. okay? But the most important thing here is that a native English teacher is not a superior than a non-native one. It is not superior. Both can be as well as competent. Okay, and the way they teach, it is important too, because here in Ecuador, teachers are teaching English through our own culture. And English, native English teachers are English teaching, but by their own culture. And that could be a little bit difference between them. Okay, this is a question for you. I need you to answer, if possible, the place of language. Are you agree with? Please, Slilma, can you help me reading the first question, please?
Sure. The principal objective of English teaching is to make our students communicate like native speakers.
Slilma, can you tell me, are you agree with?
Well, not like native speakers. Maybe that's not like the objective. The objective is to be just communicative. Like you can actually understand and, I don't know, generate ideas with other people to express yourself, like not like a native, because, well, all of us and all American and Latin American people, actually, we have accent, but we can like make us understood. So I think that's the objective.
Thank you so much, Slilma, for your participation. And Dorleni, can you tell me your personal opinion about the second one? Students should not to use their first language or mother tongue in class when learning English. What do you think about?
I think that this could be according to the age of the students. For example, I work with the smaller kids, and they need to communicate to teacher. It's important that we teach them, first of all, the most common commands that are necessary for them to communicate with the teacher or among the classmates. But if they have something important to tell to the teacher and it's in Spanish, even in Spanish, I think that we must accept as teachers, and also we can teach them how to tell those words in English, so the next time they are going to do in English.
Thank you so much for your participation. So now I want to tell you a language tip about this topic. The book says that we have to let our students to translate, to use the mother tongue to translate. At first, to translate words, then to translate sentences, because they are going to be more productive doing that, okay? And that is the final tip for you, that we have to let the students to express themselves with their mother tongue, because it is important for them to feel identified with his own language. That's it. Thank you so much. Now we are going to continue with my partner.
All right, guys, can you please go back 2 slides?
This one?
The previous one also.
This one?
Yes, there. All right. I'll try to be as quick as possible so that I do not steal your lightning. All right. Native versus non-native English teacher. And as your presentation is presenting, both are competent. That is true. Given that both teachers are prepared in methodology, right? Which sometimes is not true for native English speakers that come to Ecuador, right? Sometimes they are trained educators, sometimes they are not. And they are both competent as long as they are trained educators. Not compared to you guys, that you have been trained for this, right? So that is the idea. Just make sure you know your place, right? You were trained for this. Not only in the language, but also in methodology and didactics and how to deal with this and evaluation and everything, right? So sometimes you can be better prepared than a person who comes as a tourist and decides to stay teaching English, right? So know your place, all right? And the content is, and one more thing, I'll give you the floor, Miguel, in one more minute. Bear with me, one more minute. All right. The thing is that, for example, you guys learned English and learned to pay attention to small details, right? An example of this is that when native speakers, they already know their language and they do not need to focus on some aspects. I'll give you an example in Spanish. Um, who. Let's say, Raúl, give me a hand. Can you please conjugate the verb caber in pretérito?
Pretérito. He cabido. No sé.
That is not pretérito. Yeah, there. That's it. That is just the example, right? We learned our Spanish very generally, and that's how native speakers of English learned their English. You guys learned every little detail of English, right? So that you might have a little advantage, right? Okay, there. Miguel, please, you have your hand up.
Yes, just a minute, I'm going to steal from you. Well, that's true, but when you see teachers from other countries that they are also qualified, they come here and they kind of compete with us. So there's also another factor that should be taken into account, and it's the context. It's the, how can I explain myself? It is the area. I mean, I don't know if these teachers, maybe they are native speakers, they also have a lot of degrees to defend themselves, but they don't know especially how to teach the Ecuadorian student. Because I've seen them having a lot of conflicts, especially at university level, having a lot of conflicts because maybe they can teach European students or American students, but our students are pretty different and they need a lot of experience to get that.
That is very true as well, right? And remember, when you teach a language, you teach the culture. So it is not that we're only teaching through Ecuadorian culture, we're taking advantage of our culture to teach English and the culture related to that language, right? So we're taking advantage of our culture, but not teaching our culture, right? Okay, that's it. Please continue.
Thank you so much. So now my partner, Nicolas.
Hey, now let's get into this topic, which may be familiar to all of us, I hope, right? So language acquisition theories and teaching methodologies, right? So something that I would really like you guys to bear in mind is that these are just guidelines, okay? There is not such a thing as one single methodology that can provide everything we need as teachers, okay? So it is really up to our wisdom as teachers to incorporate material from each of these methodologies, right? So that's really pragmatic, a pragmatic choice. So language acquisition theories and teaching methodologies, right? So all of the teaching methodologies that are available to us come from certain fundamentals regarding psychology, regarding cognitive science, and so on and so forth. Now, we certain psychologists um, they stated that languages are acquired intuitively, right? Some others were driven by the theory of behaviorism, right? So they concluded that learning a language is basically learning habits, right? And then we have all others stated that what happened really in our brains belong to cognitive science, so cognitive processes. And some of them quite recently have stated that what we do when learning language is we learn new skills. Now, all of this seems to be part of one whole thing, if you think about it, because yes, when we learn a language, we learn new habits in a way. We somehow modify our cognitive side of the brain also. We learn new skills and we learn certain things by intuition. Okay. The next, please, Vivi. Oh, back. Sorry, can you go back 1 minute? Yeah. So each of these four assumptions, right, from which language acquisition methodologies were derived, it really appeal to a dichotomy, right? So we have explicit versus implicit acquisition. Okay, so this has been a reason for a large set of debates, but in the end, we may be facing a reality that encompasses both. Okay, now please, next, Vivi. So language teaching approaches and methodologies, we are gonna go um, really from the very earliest one to the latest one, okay? So 16th century, what happened there? Just to locate ourselves, okay? During the 16th century, of course, Latin was at its peak, okay? So everybody needed to learn Latin in a way, okay? And then grammar translation methodology arose, okay? Why was that? Because Latin fulfilled certain purposes in society, which were related to, worship, were related to academic life as well. So basically, Latin fulfilled a written-based role in society. Okay, so it was the language for formal purposes. Okay, so to say. So this is where grammar translation methodology arose, right? So what is grammar translation, guys? Maybe some of you know. Okay, I think most of you know. So grammar translation methodology is based on the fact that students have to learn plain grammar, and then they have to learn how to translate that grammar into the target language, okay? Now, what happened? Of course, there were people who were acquainted with more revolutionary perspectives, and they said, no, this is not true. Okay, this is not the way you learn a language, right? To learn a language, you have to really immerse yourself in that language, right? And this is where the direct method arose, okay, as a counterpart to grammar translation methodology, okay? The main difference between the two is that the direct method favors full immersion in the target language. Okay, so if you really want to learn English, you have to surround yourself with English. That's it. Okay, it is not clear. It is not clear how we do that. That's the point. Okay, these are just some stipulations um, that were um, that were favored at the time. Okay, so you have to surround yourself with the language in period. Okay, now we are gonna see a little bit how things evolved over time. Okay, please, Bibi, can you switch the slide? Thanks. Okay, so grammar translation practices and some of the advocates of the opposing direct method, okay, um, really kept the scenario for what would happen up until the 20th century, okay? So it is right at the turn of the 20th century where, first of all, a science that devotes itself to language acquisition called linguistics arose, number one, okay? And then we started having certain certain, well, new perspectives on how language acquisition really happened. Okay. Of course, there was World War, sorry, World War One and World War Two, right? But that really, that point in time really urged people to learn new languages. Okay, because remember that in Europe, um, military people were, constantly being we were constantly being sent to other places. So that really demanded from scholars at the time to develop something that was a little bit more useful for them. Okay, and that would be the audiolingual method. This method is based on pure repetition. Okay, so you learn something by repeating it, right? This sounds a little bit absurd to us now, but at the time, it had certain purpose. Okay, it was based on a purpose. Okay, and that would be immediate communication, right? Especially vocabulary, things that you really need to convey, right? You really need to have that handy. But then, of course, after that, after World War II was over, there was some revolutionary thoughts about language acquisition, and people started thinking about the fact that in order to really learn a new language, you have to base your learning on presenting information, right? Or being presented that information, practicing information, and then producing something, right? So doing something with that information. So that would be a three-level pyramid, right? So to say, it made sense, but you will see that over time things evolved even more. Now, from the 1960s, 1970s, a new methodology arose, which is called the communicative approach. Okay, so most of us are familiar with this. Okay, most of us try to adapt our classroom practices to the stipulations of the communicative approach. So what it says basically, what it states is that language learning occurs when we do something with that language that is not related to learning language. So we have to learn maybe a new skill. We have to learn maybe something related to our curricula, for instance, math. We have to learn art. We have to learn many different things. So for us, for our brain not to know that we are learning language, in fact, okay? So it should be a purposeful in that we have to communicate something. We have to learn something and be able to communicate that something, right? So beyond language learning, right? So outside of that. It is called an approach because it really doesn't focus on very rigid stipulations, right? So from the communicative approach, certain methodologies have derived. We have, for instance, task-based learning. Okay, that was derived from the communicative approach, and then also CLIL, which is communication. I don't remember that. I'm so sorry. Okay, but that's just an example. Can you please turn to the other slide, Didi? Now, what do we have in the 21st century, right? We have some form of the communicative approach still, but there are advocates of other methodologies who have evidenced or have demonstrated that the communicative approach being an intuition driven approach, right, really needs some explicit instruction as well. So maybe a little bit of grammar, maybe a little bit of pronunciation, spelling, writing skills, which cannot be learned intuitively, Okay, so all of that, and all of this has resulted in the post-communicative approach, which is a similar methodology, to similar approach to the communicative approach one, so the classic communicative approach, but with certain mods, with certain modifications, right? Regarding grammar, how we teach grammar. Are we allowed to really teach grammar explicitly? Sometimes we are. Okay, that's what the post-communicative approach states, right? Please, next slide, Vivi. Oh, can you turn back? Okay, so that would be all. I'm sorry. Thanks.
Okay.
Hello, everyone. Now we are going to continue with the last point here. Point 4 and point 5.
Evelyn, I'm really sorry to interrupt you. You're not in trouble. I took your time. So let's finish this tomorrow with your part of the presentation tomorrow, please. All right. Yes, because otherwise I will be pushing you and I don't want to push you more than necessary. So let's finish this peacefully tomorrow. The first thing we do tomorrow at 5. All right. Now, before you abandon the premises, let me share my screen. You're looking at my Eva, correct? Yes. Okay, here you have this article by Long, 2009. I need you to read this for tomorrow. All right, you will be working with this one. Omajo will do tomorrow as well, but if you have time, take a quick look at Omajo. Really quick look. But I need you to read Long. We will read Omajo in class, but I need you to read Long for tomorrow. That, just in case, in every unit we work, you will see this clase virtual thingy here, and below you will see the links for the recordings, right? For every unit, just in case. Introductions, forms. Okay, these are things that you will be doing later, Cito, so don't panic about it yet. That. All right, ladies and gentlemen, it's been a pleasure.